only can represent your thoughts, what you had when you started to create a digital twin. So the digital twin in total is the sum of all digital twins representing a different view. So we always have a digital twin per view on that. And also we made a thought on smart cities, because smart cities also were mentioned in this concept and visions. And also already we are somehow there, because this is a selection of digital twins, which we have discussed before. Now with the georeference, so the data is correctly geographically located. So for example, energy production, distribution, storage, and consumption of energy is a use case reflected in the digital twin, which is now with the correct georeference. And there's a lot of, there's just a small button of API. So we are all discussing about API. And to my understanding and to our discussion, an API, we should discuss a little bit more in depth about what we think about API, and we should discuss about to standardize this API for not having to write every time for every program totally new APIs without any description and what you want to achieve. So if I think the name API is too general, we should structure it a little bit more in detail. And my suggestion to that is this 3 different stages of API, to discuss 3 different stages of API, because usually you use an API to retrieve information needed for your use case. So you don't get the information out of a data set or IFC data set, for example, another data set, and something is missing. So therefore, you would use an API request to retrieve information out of the program, created that data, to get it for your use case. When this information is not already done there, so the second level of an API would be use an API, get into the program, make this program run again, and create the information you are missing. So create information, export it by IFC, so you get it. The third stage of the API is something difficult to achieve, but sometimes it's also very, very needed. And the third stage of the API is provide information needed within the receiving software. Usually we use IFC to have a data set we can use in the next step of work. When you import IFC data into another program, usually this information is dead information. So you get information off a wall, but the wall is not behaving like a wall in the accepting or receiving software. So your production chain is cut. So your process chain is cut. If you want to make this wall longer, if you want to make this wall being really a wall in your new CAD system, you have to re-ask the guy who created the wall to do another wall and to put it again inside. If you don't want to do that, what would be helpful is using the API to recreate the information you have retrieved from the sending software in your receiving software, being created in your receiving software in the way as it is mentioned. So a wall behaves as a wall. Simple things. So in our company, so I haven't presented myself. So Konstantinos, Kessoudis, I'm in the construction room, but I'm also working in a construction company, Strabag, which is quite big. So number 10 in Europe, centralized mainly based in Germany, Austria, so in the Central European markets, in Poland, in the Czech Republic, and all the eastern countries in the southeast of Europe. And the problem we have, for example, very simple problem we have is if we have an opening and we discuss an opening in a wall, why IFC, and we import just the opening from one program to another program, the opening doesn't behave like an opening. It don't make a hole in the other wall. Very simple. So therefore, we have to use an API. And therefore, I think, as all we have problems with that, we should discuss it also in buildingSMART. It is on the roadmap of buildingSMART, what we think on API. So let's go on. So these were our initial thoughts on the roadmap. So finally, we have done a little bit better roadmap, but also this roadmap has to be explained. And I don't want to go into the picture because this type of picture we'll see a lot in all rooms. But what is this picture addressing? So what this picture is addressing is that all buildingSMART sectors are challenged to discuss the required core elements of the roadmap as an industry standard for the building sector. The themes I have discussed just some minutes before. So what is the main things here, the key things? So the key elements of this industry standards agreements, to my understanding, are, and sorry for that bad animation, it should be other way around, but we had to change computer, and therefore maybe animations work a little bit strange here. So the key elements of as an industry standard should be use cases, because use cases are the definition of processes. And not only processes, because these use cases are also ending then in our contracts. So this is what our client is requesting us to do digital, and what we expect as part of the fragmented construction industry. Other partners do digital and hand us over digital. So according to that, to the use cases, we want to get data, and data not only as data, because we want to have information. Digital information is something different rather than data. Data is something with bytes, 0, 1s, and something. Information is, if I understand, if all people understand, what does that mean, what I get. And we have to discuss about, I think, also the next key element. If we share use cases together on a construction site, between planners, constructors, and users, where we do that on a common data environment. So we share processes, we share information, and we should do in a shared environment. And therefore, we have, I think, to step in as buildingSMART to define and what is that common stuff of a CDE we can have from one production site to the next production site. So the following slides, I will go into more detail in the whole picture of that, but with a special footprint about use cases, and give you an overview about what I think about use cases and the interaction between use cases, data management, and common data environment. And after this presentation, I hope for a very intensive discussion. And what are your thoughts? So why use cases? So use cases about to communicate, to understand, and to implement. So that's the theory. The practice is a little bit mentioned above. So that in the middle, I like that picture. So this is coming out of Christian religion about and other religions about building a Tower of Babylon, where the people couldn't build a tower because they didn't understood each other. And that's something which really happens maybe in digital way. And what we need is a common understanding on shared processes and what is that in detail. So what is a use case in detail? A use case is a process in which a project team develops BIMs of the existing conditions for a site, facilities on site. So that's the definition of buildingSMART 2019 done. So use case is a starting point of IDM. Yes, of course. And it describes the expected results of a process in the phase of planning, building, managing, which is executed digitally. Okay, so far so good. So if I try to make a picture out of that, so this is the initial situation. We do have a client who is demanding something digital, and he has a solution IT landscape in his house. So every client has his IT landscape. And then he meets on a project, he meets a company, an execution company, either a designer, construction company, whoever. And this company also has an IT solution landscape. And the use case should describe a digital part of the contractual work. So this is the definition of a use case. And the problem is, to my understanding, and we have done a lot of projects, digital projects in our company. By the way, I've built up the whole BIM department in our company. So the problem is we have no common, no sufficient common definition, structure, and language when we come to a project. When we come to a project, then we start to set up writing a BIM execution plan, asking the client what is your expectation, and on every side we do the same thing. So there is no common understanding if we meet on a construction site. To come back to the example with the bricks, there is a standard. So if you go to a construction site, if you go to build something with the bricks, there's a brick standard. So the formats are clear. So every person will come to that construction site with the same set of bricks, and they can build a wall. If we come to a construction site, we want to make BIM on that, we have to discuss about what we do every time new. So if this is the problem, what's the impact? Each participant writes his own use case by the moment, or it was that problem before of use case management buildingSMART. So everybody took a white piece of paper, he wrote down what is my use case and thought he will be understood. So the use cases were not broken down by the construction industry, or still, this is a message to my own industry. We haven't stepped in enough to break down the use case in a way that contractors, subcontractors, all the construction companies meeting on a construction site can work digitally together, seamless. We haven't done that. So the problem is our own company systems are difficult to adapt to customer requirements. We have set up BIM, internal BIM solutions, and we work with BIM. So thousands of people work with BIM inside. You never see us outside doing that, because the problem is we can't connect our system so easily to our the companies. And BIM on construction sites, of course, become very, very difficult, but it also becomes very difficult if different planners are working together, and planners and constructors and facility managers. So it's all somehow red. So what would be the solution? The solution, to my understanding, is to have a definition. So to have a common definition, to have a common structure, to have a common syntax and common semantics. Usually this is known as language. So for example, we use English, sorry for my poor English, but at least we have a common syntax and semantics. So if I use some words and build some sentences, you can understand hopefully what I want to express, because we share this common language. So what you need also is to have this common structure and definition for use cases, because use cases is nothing else, and describe that in the top. So it is a process which has an input and an output. It needs skills and roles to be done, and it's a digital service as part of the contract. And we need also a clear strategy to structure that in a way that there is that are use cases on a top level, which is defined by the client. At the end, the client wants to have, for example, the whole works of construction being done and digital, but not in detail how we do the formwork, how we do put in the concrete, whatever. He is interested in the result. So this is the level 3 on-site we share, and then we should have this definition already done. So if we do that, the impact would be hopefully a little bit better, So the customer request is breakdown to execution. So if you have a customer asking for, we would like to have a digital construction site, we can add for the construction site, from the construction industry, we can say, oh, this was what you asked for, and this is the breakdown, what we are going to produce. It will define reproducible digital standards or processes which can be connected. If they are reproducible, we have them from site to site to site. So we have, for example, in our company, per year, we do 16,000 projects. On every project, we have for about 30 different parties. 16,000 projects multiplied by 30. And every project is different, on different location, looks like different, and has always different parties. So you can imagine what does that mean to connect that digital if we don't have a structure we can rely on even before. So it makes us much more easier to connect our landscape, but also all other people have it easier to connect their digital landscape on them. So the process chain, independent from company size, is possible to achieve. So not only big companies, wealthy companies, investing a lot of money in digitalization effort, but also the 2 people's company, 3 people's company, how companies have a possibility to get being part of a digital project, but also having the possibility to digitalize their own company and make that on every site again and again. So BIM on construction side will be achievable. So this is our understanding. So to come so far a little bit to the end. So if this is the solution, what we want to achieve, so how we get there. So, okay, the first step is defining a structure, syntax, semantics for these use cases, and breakdown of use cases on site from the view of a construction industry. So we do have, by the moment, is this use case management. You will see in other presentations, I think. But to point it out, by the moment in the use case management, what we do have in buildingSMART is we have now the possibility to have structured documents. So we are in the first. Well, let me see if I can show. Yes, here we are in this first compartment. This is where use case management buildingSMART starts. But what we want to achieve, at least at the end, we want to achieve a machine executable data model. Machine executable data model means a machine supported data model. So we have so many data that we need the computer to understand, to help our people when the foreman is going to make a formwork for his for the construction site. He just has to enter his name and the job he has to do, and then he gets the information he needs to do, and not searching for information, but the computer helps you. And to get there, we have to do all that steps. We have to make out of structured document, we have to make a machine readable document, we have to make a machine understandable document, and then it's executable. So therefore, we need a concept of functionality and service for use case management in buildingSMART. So it's nice that we start, but we have to make it with a professional plan where we got to go. So once we have, as we have talked about, that if we have use cases, processes defined in buildingSMART, what's about data? So we need a concept of a functionality on service for data filtered and connected to use cases. If we now go to bSDD, for example, which is a very good concept, so we have national consolidated and structured data in bSDD, and you will find millions of information. So we have to give the person acting on construction site the possibility that his use case, that use case filters the data he needs for his process. And therefore, it's a concept. And if we have the bSDD, so where national data, consolidated data is structured, what's about the project data? So national data is something you use in the market. On the project, usually you have a selection of that, somehow an adoption to your project. And this is now in the discussion in Europe in a lot of so-called national feature servers, and how is this connection. So we need a overall strategy, a concept, how to connect process and data, and how this will interact. And this both are working on CDEs. And we need a concept of a CDE role and connection to make it, I think there's missing a part, to make that CDE being used on every construction site. For example, in our company, we have 3, 4, 5 CDEs in usage. It would be better to have one in usage, and this CDE is connected to all our production systems, to all our information producing systems, because then it is we have the most efficient usage of that. But then we need a concept that this CDE we have chosen is able to be connected in every project. So we need an open API, an open BIM definition of a CDE to connect that to this world. And of course, we have then to, as I pointed out, to discuss about what is this API, and is there a standard in APIs, so we can have less effort if we try to retrieve information, to create information, and to pass information from one IT system to the other system. So now I have just five questions brought with me, and then I will start the discussion. So my first suggestion for discussion is to think about, don't we need a minimum of agreed common use cases to gain a comprehensive understanding of how digital processes in construction will become an industry standard across the projects? The problem what we face is, if I ask in my company, hey, we need a standard for how we make a wall, a concrete wall, and if I ask 3 departments, they will give me 4 different use cases how they create a wall. If I just change the position, not ask the people, just change the position, I try to understand the wall. So I just try to put myself in the role of being a concrete wall. And I think this concrete wall is always done in the same recipe. The people only think that it's always different. We always have a formwork. We just have a reinforcement. We first put the formwork then one side, then we make the reinforcement, then we close the formwork, then we put the concrete inside, pour it, we take off the formwork, that's it. And we do that 60,000 times per year in 60,000 projects. And every time we try to invent the wheel new. So can't we have a minimum agreed processes in that, also with our competition? Processes and data are mutually dependent. So ultimately, the person doing the work needs the information to get the job done. So don't we need filterable data sets per process? What I explained before. Do we need an open set of functionalities available across all CDEs? So when we have this CDE on the projects being used, if we have to change every time the CDE, it would be difficult. If everyone has chosen one CDE, the CDE should have a sufficient defined open set of functionalities to be connected, so I can connect every CDE on each project, so we don't lose connectivity to the digital solutions and ecosystems of the companies involved. The fourth question is about where should this formulation of all these goals take place? So we have a lot of discussions to do, and what we need is a leading organization worldwide, I think, that involves all stakeholders and ensures implementation. So where we can have this forum. And to my understanding, it is to be done in the industry. So since we are talking about industry and segment standards of collaboration, it shouldn't be done by my companies defining whatever my company thinks. If it comes to how we build a wall, a concrete wall on construction site, we should discuss that as an industry standard. And I think the organization representing this segment, so this the segment needs have to be addressed. So these are associations. So nevertheless, they need an international organization. So these are associations. But if we look on the association of architects, associations of engineers, associations of producers of windows, associations of whomever, they need an organization to organize them. They need an internationally set up organization that can provide this coordination, both for individual markets, national, because sometimes we have national differences, as well as internationally, by sufficient knowledge of collaboration in the construction industry. And isn't that the best address to bSDD? So this is my question to bSDD. So this is a task. But as I've pointed out, it's not only a task. There are a lot of demands behind of that. So let's discuss about that. So for not forget the questions, I've summarized them a little bit. So we can start the discussion if you like. Or answer your questions first, of course, first of the discussion. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, my question...
hold on a sec here. So we do have a microphone, so everyone online can also hear what's going on. So I'm going to pass this around when you got questions.
Thank you very much for a very informative presentation. My question is, we have two stages of like a design stage process and then the construction stage, execution. The both team, they have a different approach towards execution. The level of detailing is also different at both stages. Mm-hmm. So how, in my experience, the both team, they usually work in silos and they don't want to communicate with each other. So how this happened, like the information developed at the design stage can be more useful or integrated for a contractor to build on top of it, not to restart from the beginning as per his own approach.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, because the most ideal world would be the designer and the contractor and the facility manager start on the same time. But usually in our contracting, we don't have that. In our contract world, we don't have that. So first, usually the client starts first with making a design and then finding a construction company. And then a construction company sees for the first time the project and may address their thoughts about the design. If you do that this way around and that way around, maybe it gets better. And after this, it is built, or just in the middle of the building, there comes a facility manager on board, and then he sees that, if you would have done that before, it would have been better. So this is a question about our contracting structure. So either we change the contracting structure. We have that in Europe involved in this partnership projects, where a client starts a project with all participants in the beginning, and he can change the participants if he thinks that, for example, it's difficult for a client to start with a construction company in the beginning, but he starts with a construction company of his chosen to get in the input of the construction information. And if he thinks that then it's better to change, he pays out the construction company for the service they have done so far and hand it over to the next construction company. So this is change of our contractual models. And the other way, of course, is if we do it in the chain again, we have to accept in construction industry that we have to produce our production model by ourselves, because we can't ask the architect from the beginning to have all information done as we need it for the construction, because then he would not be a constructor. He would be a constructor, not a designer. So, and as the designer don't knows what construction company will come, so how he can know that. So I think construction industry has to accept that we have to do a production model. Even I'm convincing my company still to do that. But we have found a way, at least, that this construction model being done in BIM is faster done rather than all the jobs we have done before. So, does it answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. Like if we say, like, from the concept onward, if a contractor goes for a design and build, like a detailed design and then build, so the same model what he has used for the design purpose goes into the production model. Or if the designer is building a model, design model, and then he should be responsible to go into the construction and help the contractor to build the construction model. Will that be like an overlap? Or
also, yes, we have also tried out this way, but then it's the augmentation of the contractor of the designer. So sometimes in contracts we have with public sector, it's even forbidden in Germany. So you can't take the designer on your side because the designer is on the side of the client. But it's also a possibility, yes. At the end, we have to share the information always together, yes.
Thank you for your full presentations. I'm Elvis from Hong Kong. I think in construction site, you're talking about more CDE platform. We have a lot of data lake inside. Could consider, do you adopt AI for somehow analysis in end user, owners, or somehow the designer and contractor? I think AI is this generation, we need to fully utilize AI to solve the problem in construction site. How about also we can adopt the ChatGPT, for example. What is the suggestion in this field for this generation to adopt AI? Thank you.
Yes, so I think AI is very, very important because it helps us to predict things earlier and to learn about projects we have done already and to project it to the future, so to minimize the risk. So the problem of the AI, of course, is that the AI understands us. The problem is not the AI. The problem are we. We are chaotic. We describe every construction site different. And to find an intelligent algorithm to understand our chaotic way is a little bit very, very, very expensive and very, very difficult to program. So therefore, I just suggest with my ideas here to think about that we change our ways of thinking and we try to standardize, to structure ourselves, to share a common syntax about how we use the terms and why we use it, and then the AI can understand us better. Imagine we have not millions of use cases, but maybe 1,000 use cases to describe how you build a building. Yeah. Yeah. First is, of course, to understand what is the information. The second, we should discuss about and who owns afterwards the information and how we publish the information. Yeah. So when the AI once understands us, if the AI then has access to data, it can learn a lot. So every company can do that for themselves. So also we discovered in our company that we have a lot of information that we don't use so far. And now we try to make this information usable. We are more than 100 years in the market. If we would have the possibility to have an analysis on the 16,000 projects done by so many years back, you can imagine what we can predict. We can't. We are still fighting for that. And not only for our company, then we have to think about what is that data we want to share in the market. So what is public? What is
bSMART is the public.
Yeah. What is public data, or what is shared in the industry sectors between architects before being totally public? So this is also the next question we have to discuss.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Stefan from Vienna International Airport. I want to add a comment to the first question you have. Need we minimum of agreed industry standard use cases per market? What do you mean by market? Do you mean the domain like facility management planning, or what exactly? Because wouldn't it make more sense to divide it in that it can be more useful?
I think personally, I think it's more international, but I think somehow the markets tend to think always in their language, and to think that the small different things in their regulations make a very big difference.
Yeah.
But a concrete structure like this looks like the same in every country. A road looks like the same in every country, so sometimes it's all different, the layers or the thickness of something.
But this is focused on the construction side. If we see, for example, facility management on data handover from the model to facility management, then it could be maybe make more sense to have a look on more general way from the domain specific deviation, more or less.
Yeah, because cleaning the floors here is the same in all over the world.
This is the only hint I want to add to the first question we have here for the discussion. Maybe it would make sense.
Yeah, we have to augment it. Yes, you're right. Per market and per domain. And anyway, you can discuss all together, so don't have to discuss one-to-one. So.
Yeah, just need a microphone. Good morning. Thank you. I would like to refer to the first bullet point as well. Especially to the example you have given. The concrete wall is not the same. And I think it's not the same for the different actors that are involved. Because let's just drill it down to a very specific part, which is form work. Form work for a client, as for example me, is not important at all. For a planner or a designer, it might be a non-permanent building element. And for a contractor, it might be material. So if we are to go towards defining use cases and processes that are agreed on, I think the way that bSDD International should go is having a clear expectation management and to be really open about having chaos on that use case management platform. A use case management is not something that can solve all the problems at once, and the standards cannot be made up front, but have to be extracted from best practices that are on such a product or a service or a platform.
And I also wanted to reflect on the first one. It relates a bit on the second one as well. You're talking about the minimum agreed standard for standard use case for the industry. Why should we focus so detailed in really executive level of a particular construction part? Because I agree with Stefan that this is indeed different for everybody. Why don't we focus on some other process-matic, some higher level activities that we could do and help industry with coming to the same syntax and same expectations for the assignment or information management activities in general? That's maybe easier, and we have more references to come to an agreement.
Yeah, I think because of if we only stay in general definitions, the people will help out themselves doing something in the middle. Take the example of the left before, because I have told you that the association this month, I said, okay, we have a construction company. I have a data model from the former deliveries, as they are Doak, whoever, so I forgot all of them. But if you want to understand us as a company, we don't want to have a data model from every single conductor of a formwork different. So we want them to be comparable, because if we ask for a formwork, we want to be understood by all the companies. And on the other way around, you as a formwork company don't want to get a data model from Strada and a data model from Morsi or from Bouygues and from whoever to understand it from the architect. You want to have a market data model to answer the market. So who is that to define that? So who are these guys to define? I think to understand it would be the association of homework, representative of homework producers, the association of the construction industry. Because the architects are not too much interested in that, and I think the client is also not interested. He's interested in the result, not how we do it. So these two associations should discuss on that. Well, I think in buildingSMART, so buildingSMART is, I think, not an obligation to make these use cases, but to give these two associations the place to say this is, for example, use case management, you can do that. So now you have the environment, a structured environment, then you can describe the use case. For us, it would be a big help. So in my company, we would use that use case in all construction works, concrete works in all the countries. Because I have one use case for all different countries. To talk with all homework countries.
Another question back here.
Brian Rasmussen. Just a few points. First of all, you're speaking about data sets in the Formwork Association. They can become a member of buildingSMART and use the rooms to develop a standard if they want. This is point one. The first discussion you had was also about silos and who should do what and so on. You have a lot of contractual agreements. Then you have early involvement, but you also have an open BIM workflow. This is already in place. It's a matter of adopting it from the client side, which is always difficult. Last, you're asking for standards for CDEs and APIs. And I'm curious to know why, because first of all, no more standards, please. We have enough. And second of all, an API is basically the software vendor's property. So it will be them to decide if it's open or closed. So you can't really specify a standard for something that is closed in that matter. And for the CDEs, it will depend entirely on the company what they want from the CDE and what they want to use it for and what to put in the CDE. And I know many companies, they use CDEs in different ways, many different ways, but they are all within the framework of what a CDE is. So I don't believe there's any need for standards for CDEs or APIs.
I think actually Plastic will give a very good answer.
Okay, yes. Okay, perfect.
Okay, yeah, well, we have in buildingSMART, we have developed standard APIs for BCF, and then we have developed a documents API. So these are APIs that CDEs can implement. Like, I mean, CDEs typically already have an API to get documents from or files to download files. But if you implement this one standard one standard API, then any client can get documents from your CDE. Another thing is that I'd like to ask that, is there already any CDE that has this kind of functionality? Because I think it's a bit, or let's say, I would say it's very challenging to kind of develop functionality and the standardization at the same time. So like if you take the APIs that we have standardized, BCF API and Documents API, they were already, for documents, there are obviously lots of CDEs that can upload and download documents. So that was a kind of easy thing to standardize. Another thing was also the BCF, like before we had the BCF API, people were like uploading and downloading BCF files. But then for this, if there is no kind of, if you had 2 or 3 CDEs that already had this kind of functionality, then it would be easier to standardize an API, because then they could come together and agree on the API. But then then you would have, if there is no or if there is one, then there's like if there is no, then there is like a moving target of the functionality and the API. So yeah.
I think also to your question, so Pasi is one of the leaders of the Open CDE group here at BSI, and the APIs and the things that he's talking about is it provides a open standard for communications for these CDEs. It's not saying that the CDEs are completely based on open standards. It is these communication methods. So there's the foundation API, which is basically if you're going to do authentication, everybody should follow the same authentication rules and protocols. And then there's the documents API that says, okay, if I want to look for a document, I want to retrieve a document, this is how it's standardized so that it's always done the same way. And then the other one for BCF is to say, yes, instead of uploading and downloading XML files or zip files or anything, I have the ability for a server that has the capability to serve the BCF and IFC files to transfer that information between the server and the client. And those are good standards to have, and they don't step on the toes of the proprietary software and engineering of each of those CDEs. But it helps enable that communication to happen between any client and any CDE in a way that makes sense to the client, to the end user, and to the CDE provider. So that's really the purpose we're trying to get. And yes, that is much different than the types of things that we've done in the past. But at the same time, this didn't come out of nowhere because no one wanted it. This was a demand that came from different sectors, both from the vendors and end users who wanted to see this happen. And this is why these things develop. So I'm going to go, yeah.
Hi, Jean-Paul from buildingSMART France. I'm coming back on the formworks, the industry of the construction of the industry, because I think you were on the good way to isolate the fact that we have an asset to build, but an industry to build it. And it's interesting to see that all the data you are thinking about and get it in some kind of use case and processes. I think there is no information model in the IFC to support them. Formwork, for example, it's considered as a product, only a product we put as furnitures. It's not a furnitures. It's the first step. It's an element. It should be, for my opinion, another branch of classes dedicated for construction only, and it may be possible to emerge the industry because of what? Because project will be several projects for one industry. And we're always thinking about one project, one industry for this project. But in fact, construction company like me, we don't have only one project at the same time. We have several projects, and we do processes to realize all these projects at the same time with kind of processes, but we don't have IFC model support, which can support our industry only, not the deliverables of this project. And the way you are going through it, yeah, I think it's good. But the fact is not before creating standard use case and processes, we should have a model to support it. Because you cannot manage the elements we don't have in the IFC model.
Yeah, we'll do the one here. Okay.
Yeah, Tomi Anttinen. I totally disagree with you about APIs and the standards and for CDs and APIs. I think that everybody in the room is happy that I can call with my Apple phone to somebody else's Samsung phone, so that we have a standard for communicating between different products. Yeah, and still the kind of it doesn't restrict what happens inside the Apple kind of framework, or what happens inside the Android framework. So that's just one kind of communication. So that's how I see the kind of the API for CDEs, for example, that it's a way to kind of communicate, and it's just kind of a narrow path, but or not narrow lane, and it doesn't cover everything. But and like we are a small software vendor. If we need to do API against all other software packages in the world, well, everybody understands that that's not possible. So we would like to have just one API that we can use.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. Really, really spark off some ideas and thoughts for my personal thoughts. Just like to ride onto the conversation about, first of all, formwork first. I just don't know how to comprehend to get a standard when it comes to like different type of timber formwork, number one. Number two is, how do we comprehend steel formwork? Number three, in our industry, by the way, we're from Hong Kong, we have what we call the large panel formwork, which is very specific, project specific. How do you comprehend that in terms of standard? Now, besides that, within our industry, we also do a lot of prefabrication, prefab. From a prefab staircase, slab, to what we call at the moment, is very popular besides DFMA, which is what we call MIC, modular integrated construction, which, for instance, in Singapore, they call it PBVC. Doesn't matter what the terminologies are, but we putting like a unit, and do excuse the way we live is rather small as well. Like a room with structural wall included, bathroom, kitchen, sanitary fitting, what have you, all in it. And all this MIC in the process of it, how do we standardize that? I mean, we love to do that, don't get me wrong. As from a manufacturer perspective, I love to see that. From a contractor's perspective, I love to see that. From a developer perspective, I love to see that. But how? It's just so complex. Never mind turning all these different software that we use, convert it back to IFC. From IFC, all the way choose another CDE. I mean, again, I would love to have a saying, of course, if I putting my owner's hat on, I can say I can determine what CDE solutions I'm going to choose. However, things are not even as simple as that, because at the moment, our Hong Kong government is really pushing CDE full time. And we have standard to follow in terms of the procedures, so on and so forth, with the whole things that we have to follow as a processes within, for God's sake, at least 3 to 4 years to build. The quickest we would build with a smaller project is 2.5 years. Within that, within the entire supply chain and the ecosystem from owner, consultant, contractors, subbies, all following these 4 charts that we have to follow. I mean, it's just hard to comprehend that. Now, when you talk to standard, I just cannot, when through your entire presentation, I really keep on thinking, how do we tackle that? Now, putting my other hat on as being a service provider when it comes to doing BIM and simulations, we do write a lot of APIs as well. Now, I have to say, sadly, I don't mind to share, as long as we got some reward back to a commercial company and to our entities, we love to share within our industry, even globally. But somehow within our Hong Kong community, from the little that we know as a delegation here, I'm sure my other counterpart will agree that at the moment, all the APIs that we wrote is for more or less within our own corporation, our own group, because it's all so much effort and time and to spend on it. Why do you share with your dear competitors? Which I don't mind, as I said, if we got paid. So I don't know. I really need you to enlighten me, because this is a community. I trust we can talk openly and share those information globally, the pain points, as well as these glorious claiming that we should do CDE. My 2 pence worth of sharing after you really spark off my ideas, really. The hard work that we've been doing for years.
Okay, so I will come back first. So it's not about to make all the formwork producers the same formwork. So it's not about to give them a definition about how formwork should look like or whatever. So it was about the data we have to exchange, to have an agreement of data to exchange in the single steps of processes of formwork. For example, the first step when we start to connect formwork company from the side of the construction company is we have a job, we have to calculate, and then we have an idea about how we split this building in the single steps of creation. And then we send this information to a formwork company to give us an offer of the formwork, but also to give us back their idea how to make it, to suggest us maybe how to change the steps we have divided the building, to do it a little bit different, so we have a better formwork solution for that. And then I discussed that with different formwork companies. I said, what is your problem with the market? I said, hey, we get a lot of BIM models. Models have different levels of structure and different information level, and we can't use them because there's missing giving us the different steps of how you go to build this building. If you get a building data model from an architect, it's just one block concrete, and often there is not even mentioned about what kind of surface is there and what type of concrete. It's just concrete. Don't know what to do with that. So if you get that from a construction company, usually all that stuff is inside. So also there's a 4D display, so how these guys want to build it. But then when we interfere there, when we change their model, they don't want that because their model is connected to the estimation, and then we destroy the estimation. So we have to find a solution for that. We discussed that and said, okay, let's discuss on partial models. So we can change partial models. So we send you the concrete model, and we want to get back. So with the 4D information, we discuss about what information should be there, so you can make an offer for that. And not only one formwork company, but all the formwork companies can work with that in the process about understanding what these guys want to do and what we offer them back. And then we discussed about, yes, that we have to do a separate model, a formwork model, and you send us back a formwork model just as an offset of the concrete to show us your idea how we should cut our concrete model different. Then we can decide interacting. And so we're just starting defining the data set. So what data sets you need to do your job as a formwork company, and what we get back from a formwork company to a construction company, so we understand what you suggest us. And that's not only in every, and for not doing that and on every project again in one-to-one relation. Can we agree on a standard on the whole sector? And then our solution, sorry, I will just highlight this. So our solution in our company about how then we do our 5D process about making prices and risk management, all that stuff is done with software bSDD. And another company can have another solution, doesn't matter, but it is clearly defined what we expect from formwork industry, and they know what they can expect from construction industry. So that does answer your question.
So Mika, I believe you have.
Yep, I had a few comments on this. I get a bit of loop on the sound here.
Oh.
Now it's better. Okay. So a couple of comments on the questions earlier was that first of all, I'm presenting the airport room here, but I'm also working in a software company that deals with several common data environments. And first of all, I think a common API for the data exchange would be very valuable. Today, one of the main struggles is how to get data from the common data environment for the asset management, how to get that on the project side, and how to get the project side information there. And also we have these loops within the projects because there might be 20, 50 subcontractors in the project, which each have their individual software. So currently they're doing more file exchange and maybe sending BCF files if the platform is supporting that. But more open API for the communication would be valid. That's on my personal opinion is also supported by another development on the construction, which is the earth moving machinery data exchange. And it's a process that's been ongoing in ISO for 6 years now. And one of the main findings in the start was that there needs to be a common API to communicate the different changes that different machines do on site. So you're not sharing all your project data, but you're sending valuable information that this part is completed, this sector is completed. And that's something, if we think bit to the future for the, let's say we have some robots on site doing something, and they need guidance for what task is completed, which platform exists so you can actually travel there and do your task. So we're not just developing for the human-to-human communication, but we're also creating kind of the roadmap for the future applications. On earth-moving machinery, you don't see fully autonomous machines driving in cities, let's say, in next 10 to 15 years. But for the task level, you already need to have some kind of guidelines that this area is safe to work in. You can go there, you can do your task, you can move that pile of sand or that element from one place to another. And for this, there needs to be a better communication than just changing files or sending files over and backlogging them and somebody manually looking through them. I think this is a very valid point. And from the airport industry side, from the airport room, we already published a couple of our new IFC extension objects to the bSDD, and the value of that is the easier sharing for around the world, because we're already in the group presenting more than 10 countries, and sharing the information without a common place to store the main structure is really hard. There's also on bSDD, there's an example from Austria where a couple of use cases are published on the use case management side, which are only valid for Austria. So you can have both levels. You can have the common digital agreed level, and then you can have these national agreements. Because also what comes to the construction permit side that was in the yesterday's presentations and this morning's session on sustainability, every country has their own rules on stuff that you need to store as part of the model or deliver with the model. So getting that agreed on the international level is pretty impossible. It's in Finland, it's almost impossible to do that on a city level because each city has a different construction rules and stuff you need to put there. But that's a couple of comments that came to my mind.
And I'm going to go back to one of your questions, one of your points. So I think a lot of people understand that even with the new version of IFC 4.3, it's not as thorough and comprehensive as every domain would like. But that's why we had projects like the rail project, we have the tunnel project, and the bridges project was to address those issues, to then add, to enrich the schema to address those very things. I would agree that the construction side of things has probably been, I don't know that it's intentionally been ignored, but I think what you point out is exactly the kind of thing that needs to be done from the construction side of things, which is to approach it the same way that the rail stakeholders did, the way the tunnel stakeholders did, the way the roads and the bridge people did, which say, okay, you come together and you say, what is missing and how do we want to represent it, right? And begin to build that. Now, today we have a solution because through the bSDD, we can begin to propose those kinds of things, right? And start building that. And so Leon has said in the past, our technical director, is if we look to see how then that content, those entries in the bSDD are used over time, those become very easy candidates when they're highly used or highly searched or have an impact on people's use, to obviously be included immediately in the next version of IFC, right? Paraphrasing it a bit, but that's the intent, right? But yeah, so yes, it's kind of hard, but at the same time, the way that we approach these enrichments, the way that we approach these expansions is exactly through use cases, is going through the saying, well, this is our business case, this is what we want to do, here are the requirements that we need, and then if you can get consensus across a wide variety of similar competitors and peers, then that's where that whole process is like, oh, okay, well then we can make agreements on what does that structure look like? How does it relate to everything else? How does it relate not only to us internally in our business processes, but then how does it relate to the rest of the schema and what everybody else does? So yeah, but I think the beauty of it is that doesn't have to start with 10 people just sort of trying to figure out how we do this together, create a consortium, build all the money and all that. So you can actually just start it within the UCM and begin to build those, and then publish that or promote it, and then get other people to read it and feedback on it and say, okay, we can begin to build consensus from there. So we're doing pretty good on time. We got 10 minutes left.
A little bit.
I just wanted to add. I'm Merbek Belief from the building room and the steering committee, and also representing buildingSMART Germany. We also have use cases, like good that you mentioned, Austrian colleagues. We have a lot of use cases that we published, and we set a minimum requirement that will deliver them billing well. So it means not only German, our chapter members or community in Germany could read them, also colleagues from other countries can profit from them. Because use case in general should be open for everyone and understandable. That's why you need to agree that you need to put the minimum requirements. And we can see currently, it's not a critique, it's a wish, that all other colleagues from other chapters also think about us to cooperate with us. So you need to translate your use cases. So we will see how your requirements meet with ours, or how can we, let's say, collaborate in the future in other rooms, and as well as, profit from your work. Let's say, take them into account, give a credits and link them. Or on the contrary, you get the reference from us and you see what we had in the past, maybe what we're struggling with. So you have minimum requirements from your part. And that's second point now, that we have a process maps that currently you can see that they are in different shape and different, that what we try to use as a set up BPMN to 0 as a minimum requirement, because there you will be able to download that. That's currently lacking in the that you cannot put downloadable files. You have to store it somewhere and give a link. That's, I guess, it coming somewhere, and I heard that will be a modeling tool as well available. But the BPMN, with the BPMN, you can run automatization later on. That's a really good thing. If you know your processes, you can automate them. You know your process, you know your task. Within the task, you can put your exchange requirements with bSDD now, because bSDD enables you to map the stuff and map them to the building, and not only properties. bSDD is also a nice thing that you can find the IFC domain there if you're not aware which let's say entity, or maybe later on with properties types, you can map them together. So that will be also available in the next session, where we're showing that's all connected to each other. So that's the point where I guess your point and what you invited us to show, that we need to put a requirement so that everyone using all this available standards tools open and should be open, available everywhere. Screenshot usually that we can see for exchange requirements will bring me nothing. I will have to later on do it on my again represent in my BPMN or in my exchange requirements. Otherwise, you really need to do it in digital, machine readable way. Thank you.
So how many of you are familiar with the UCM platform? Okay, so simple place to start. UCM.buildingsmart.org. Simplest place to start, right? Also, if you have questions or are more interested in the OpenCDE work that's being done, OpenCDE@buildingSMART.org, right? That's the email address for their listserv. So that will get you connected to the group that Posse is a part of. It already includes Celebri, Oracle, Katenda. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people. Yeah. And I think to your point too is, what do I gain? What do I lose? Part of it is so that the end user has an easier time trying to figure out where something is. That doesn't mean that they have unfettered access. It doesn't mean that they won't be subscribing or can't or shouldn't subscribe in order to reach the content in a particular CDE. There's still that gatekeeping, but the idea is that the API standards provide a consistency in that gatekeeping. So if I'm a user using Revit and I want to access 3 different CDEs, there's a consistency in that. I don't have to have 3 different interfaces and 3 different APIs in order to do that. There's one that everybody's agreed that's acceptable to access my CDE. So, but you still have, yeah, you can still do the gatekeeping if necessary.
Yes, thank you. Franco Volker from the French chapter. You started your presentation with a definition of languages, and I have a feeling that you tackle something which is similar to the theory of Christopher Alexander on language patterns, because I have a feeling that we are here discussing about patterns using the word of standards. Patterns is an element which is a description which is non-finished by principle. It just gives a common overview of an object without any definition finalized, without standards. It's just a pattern. And a pattern means 2 things: a common understandable definition and interaction of the objects with other objects in the universe. So I have a feeling that we should maybe think about it. It's an open question because you used a lot references to language, syntaxes, dictionary, and so on. And Christopher Alexander really described this approach on patterns. And I think if we look at the building as patterns, you said the wall is the same everywhere in the world. Yes, it's a pattern. It's not a standard. So maybe it's very something to dig on, that we are not looking after standardization, because our colleague is right. The definition of concrete is different everywhere in the world, and it's an infinite description, but the pattern of the wall is the same everywhere. So just an open reflection to dig on if it makes sense.
Thank you, because you got the meaning why I use standard. Maybe I use the word standard in the wrong way. I mentioned the common understanding, and the common understanding can be reflected in a pattern, in a rule. So it's all about common understanding and defining this common understanding. It's not about the standard in a way to say, yeah, you have to put it in this way. So it's about to gain this common understanding somewhere written down and understand it before.
The big advantage of the pattern is that it's open by definition.
Yes.
Because it must be completed during the lifespan of the object.
Yeah. And the pattern is including all that automatic functionality, because the pattern is thought in advance that if you use that, it matches what you want to do. So, yeah, I have done all the patterns for the company. So, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, my suggestion how to proceed with what you're doing is to first find some use cases, for example, this concrete work, and work on the scheme of what is the data that get exchanged. And when you have that down, then start thinking about the API, because if you think about them at the same time, then I think it's too much.
Mm-hmm. No, I just wrote down some of my thoughts. So what I want to rise up is if we think on that use cases are necessary. So the first thing is to agree on do that use cases on one platform. So at least then we have the possibility to meet the others, or to see the other people's ideas on top of that. And therefore, we made a decision in the construction room to use the use case management of buildingSMART. So this is obligatory. So if you want to do example in the construction room, it's about there has to be use case definition in the use case management. And the other thought was, yes, it's okay to start to do that on a platform. And by the moment, what we have as a result of this platform is a structured PDF. It's okay, it's structured. The first time it's somehow structured in some way, it's readable, but we have to go on in thinking about how to make this, how to help this use case management to become from being a structured PDF platform to a machine readable platform. There are a lot of steps to do that. So we don't. It's asking to discuss it in all rooms about, do we want that really, and if you want them, what would be the roadmap of developing the use case management platform.
All right, we're coming to time. Thank you, everyone. And all sessions are recorded, and the presentations will also be made available PDF form on the platform, if not later today, later this week or next week. So thank you for joining us.